The deployment of modern technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, big data, and whatnot in the medical field has always been a question of curiosity for human race. But of lately, and thanks to the inundation of startups across the globe, the use of such technologies in serving both the ends of the medical fraternity, be it the big pharmaceutical clients or the least common denominator, the customer, who's always been exploited as far as ambitions and money is concerned in this sector. The use of technologies now is possible. We have CEO of one such company which is using artificial intelligence for the benefit of B2B and B2C in this domain. Gunjan Bharadwaj, thank you so much for your time. Gunjan is the CEO and founder of Innoplexus and Partix. Gunjan was also one of the winners of BW40 Under 40 awards. Gunjan, tell us something about your company. And I heard you're 38, which I don't believe. But anyways, what does your company do? Explain to our audiences in brief what does your company do and how do you deploy artificial intelligence in this field?
See, this industry, healthcare industry, medical knowledge is doubling itself every 73 days. So you have mountains of exploding data and many unanswered questions for the industry and all different stakeholders, big pharmas, biotech, CROs, but also patients. I always say medicine is like religion. As you needed priests to translate your prayers in a language that gods understand, in medicine, everyone is dependent on either the big pharmas or the biotechs or physicians. And the poor people who do not speak that language are regulators, investors, and worse, patients. So we have created a scalable AI that understands the language of medicine.
Okay.
We get all the data that's published, extract, organize that using AI, and for proprietary data, we leverage blockchain.
And when you say understood by medicine as a language, that means reducing the time which is taken by the doctors per se, the community per se, to understand the realistic picture. Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. So medical knowledge is doubling itself every 73 days. 32x explosion of data, and also the order of complexity. We saw that during this pandemic, a host of different vaccine technologies, etc., and people talking about it, trying to get their heads around understanding what it all means for them. It's the same challenge for big pharma researchers working in research institutes, biotech, CROs, etc. And worse so for patients because they don't understand medicine, because they do not have the requisite capability. Now, we can leverage AI. No one human being has the capability to go through all the scientific publications that come out, all the clinical studies that come out. There are over 10,000 scientific congresses. Hospitals generate quality reports. It's just impossible to fathom.
Overall premise, if I understand it like a layman, is to reduce the time which is taken to understand the complexities in the real picture.
Absolutely.
Correct?
And leverage computational power and AI to analyze all of this data in a very short period of time, as you mentioned, to create hypotheses that have the highest probability of success. So what next novel biomarker can tell you whether someone has prostate cancer or not? What biomarker can tell you whether you have IBD or not? What early stage asset has the highest probability of success to treat a cancer such as pancreatic cancer, 5-year survival rate of under 3%, of treating Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and so on? All these questions.
Okay. Now, if I rightly understand, Gunjan, there was this Rajnikant movie of lately where there was a robot, Chitti, and he used to deduce the condition of the patient by going through the encyclopedia. I somehow envision your company to be like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, something of that sort. But Gunjan, there is a flip side to this as well. What you are dealing with is humongous amount of data. And as we have discussed earlier as well, data is the new oil. How do you ensure that not only the privacy of the patient or the customer is maintained here, but at the same time, you need data to enhance the scope of services to reach for the services to reach the right person at the right time. How do you maintain that balance?
See, technology is the new leveler. Blockchain, is there to democratize different industries, decentralize, and take the power away from specific central institutions or incumbent big stakeholders right back into the hands of patients. We leverage blockchain and artificial intelligence together to make that happen. We have created a data exchange, a DAO exchange for patients. Patients can license their data directly to drug discovery programs or research institutes who want this data to train their AI to bring in drugs faster to the same patients, to the same very patients, thereby incentivizing these patients equitably, and at the same time making sure that their data is very transparently used by specific programs in complete knowledge of what the usage would be, what program it is, who is conducting this program, etc., etc. And as we do that, being a European company, we are GDPR compliant. And as you know, that's the most sophisticated and restrictive data protection and security act anywhere in the world. So we use that legal blanket in providing and delivering this promise of data security and equitable incentivization for this real world data to patients.
Sure. Now, Gunjan, if I talk about the Indian context and the Indian market, how receptive is the Indian ecosystem when it comes to modern technologies like yours? And if there are fears, what are they?
The fears are, of course, where would my data go? Would someone misuse this data? Would this data leave the country? Is there a hidden agenda? Is there a different monetization mechanism? But when you say, you are legally compliant to GDPR, your incentive is just a very small transaction fee on the data, on the transactions, and the intent is to give the complete value in a very transparent way. We are not service providers; we are a platform company. So, like Steve Jobs came with iTunes, we are creating this iTunes of real world data. Patients come in and license their data to a research institute, a pharma or biotech that wants to use this data to train their AI.
But Gunjan, India is relatively a third world country when it comes to data protection and management. Okay, you adhere to GDPR guidelines, but as a country, you go out and do a survey, most of them will not be even aware of a data protection bill. We casually lend out our data. So when it comes to the Indian market, how authoritative and, for the lack of better word, exploitative are pharmaceutical companies when it comes to extraction of data, and how you, who is genuinely inducing technology in this space, are you balancing it?
I think the incumbents, the big stakeholders in any industry are exploitative. Be it finance, banks played a significant role till the advent of DeFi. And now you see, you just give your assets onto a DeFi pool and they trade and give you returns. You don't need big buildings on prime real estate in big countries, in big cities. The same way healthcare power equations will be changing. Here also, there are large market research companies which pay 20 euros to a patient, aggregate that data, those insights together and sell for hundreds of thousands and millions of euros back to big pharmaceutical companies or CROs. Why should it be the case if the insights are coming right from patients? Why can't we take these middlemen out and give this value back into the hands of the patients? Everyone talks about patients first, but nobody really wants to put patients at the center. With technology, we can do that. The difference in why I believe this approach is going to be successful is because we are putting the incentive in the hands of the patient. If you give a $5,000, $10,000 check in the hands of the patient, nothing in this world, also the polity, us being a democracy, is going to work against it.
Do you think there will be spillover effects of your technology to, say, generic market? Because India is a huge market for generic medicines. Considering the fact we have huge income inequality, most of the people will not be able to afford the results which your company produces or your sector produces. So do you think that the technology also has spillover effect for people who are at the bottom of the pyramid?
So the disposable incomes are low, but if they generate the same data, If someone in Dharavi or in a slum uses Google, searches for something, he or she is generating the same data that you or I are generating. If you or
I'm talking about the results which the pharmaceutical companies will going to use.
Absolutely. So,
because eventually they will be making drugs out of that research.
Analogous to that, if a poor person finds a tumor in his body and does a tumor sequencing of the tumor over his treatment, that's equally valuable to a rich man getting the same tumor, equally valuable for a pharmaceutical company. So if we can create a currency that ascribes its value through this real world data, and a poor person at the bottom of the pyramid can pay for his treatment using that currency, then we'll work towards equality and democratization of this industry. So data is equally valuable no matter where it comes from what strata, if it is complete, if it's scientific, if it's organized properly.
Sure. Now, Gunjan, where do you see the scope of entrepreneurship in the medical domain as far as the Indian market is concerned? Do you see more entrepreneurs and more risk-taking organizations, especially startups, coming in?
I believe healthcare is the ultimate domain where technology has to play a leveler. People, of course, it's a long shot because there are vested interests, there are power equations, there are stakeholders that are welded innately in. There are many startups that work for patients and have not been successful because most of the patients cannot afford all these services. But I believe with technology we can get there. We are making a very brave, very strong move in that direction, and I'm sure many of the entrepreneurs that I talk to are also keen and supportive of looking into this direction. So there will be a wave of startups coming in as India's telecom penetration, internet penetration increases.
Sure. Now tell us something about your app, Curia.
So Curia was started 11 months back, and it started doing two things. First, it answered questions such as, who is the expert in cancer? So there are 600 cancer types and many thousands of subtypes, but on hospitals you just find oncologists. So how can we bridge this information asymmetry? Second, what are alternatives that are out there? Is there a drug approved elsewhere that is not approved in India, for instance? And where are clinical studies taking place where these patients could participate in that is relevant for them? And they could also apply directly from the app for these clinical studies. As I mentioned, 80% of the patients have no clue about these experimental drugs. And at the same time, 75% of clinical studies fail to complete because they don't find patients in time. Apart from this, we created a functionality called Cancer Twin. Patients can find similar patients and converse to them using a chat client embedded in a blockchain, completely secure, encrypted. No wonder within 11 months we are 500,000 active users, and the number is increasing because patients don't pay anything to avail these services. Now we are adding a host of services like independent second opinion for as low as 10,000 rupees from global experts, digital therapeutic services, nutrition advisory, etc. And we are rolling out this token Amrit, which any patient can get if he or she were to license their data to any drug discovery program. They can use Amrit to avail all these services or liquidate this Amrit on any secondary exchange in lieu of rupees, dollars, euros, etc.
So tell us about the stage of your startup, like how much money you have raised and where do you see yourself in the next?
So in Partex, we have raised close to 100 million.
And who are the lead investors?
Francisco Fernandez, who is the most successful fintech entrepreneur in Europe, is the lead investor in Partex. And we have very prominent family offices from Europe and successful entrepreneurs as other investors in Partex as well.
Sure. Any last closing remarks from you for as far as the wellness and health industry of this country is going? What are the loopholes you would like to see being addressed in the coming future?
There are three things that we need to do in terms of wellness and healthcare industry in our country. First, we need to actively push for technology penetration in government hospitals, in private hospitals, in terms of how we aggregate, ingest data, aggregate organized data, Things such as telemedicine, you need last mile healthcare delivery. You can't have the same capabilities everywhere, and technology can really create that wonder here. Second is affordability. We need to make healthcare services affordable, whether it is through insurance or being innovative about insurance or using innovative applications such as Amrit that completely change the monetary equation in the healthcare space, wherein you create a currency with real world data. And third would be policy instruments. We need to incentivize entrepreneurs who work in healthcare, who take risks in healthcare. If you want to create a new dialysis unit which is untested, one could experiment with that, one could pilot with that. I actually worked with the late Manohar Parkar.
Do you think the digitization of the digital health card, which is quite synonymous with the Aadhaar card, there are conversations going around in the policy corners of the Lok Sabha that there could be a digital health card in the coming few years as far as the Indian market is concerned? Do you think it's a step in the right direction?
This would be a game changer. But just mind you, Germany has not been successful in doing that.
And why do you think? Why do you think? What are the challenges?
Because people shift from Mumbai to Delhi, Delhi to Agra, Agra to Jaipur to Chennai, and you have different providers, different diagnostics providers, different hospitals, and so just the card is not enough. The data infrastructure, the data backbone that lies beneath has to be aligned and seamless. Germany has 16 national registries. You move from one state to the other, the data is lost. And that's where the data protection laws can become a hindrance. If you make them so stiff that organizations can't exchange the data of a specific individual because you need explicit approval, and that explicit approval doesn't come all the time, you will have different silos of registries. And unless you have longitudinal data of patients and also what impact these therapy interventions have caused, you can't really do a comparative analysis of which hospital is good in this providing this therapy versus the other. Where should the funds for research, funds for hospitals be focused on to? So that's the challenge that Europe has seen. Apart from Scandinavia, Europe is in the Middle Ages. People say we are an emerging country with respect to telecom, internet penetration, adoption of technology. I can say India is one of the most developed countries in the world.
Okay, Gunjan, thank you so much for your time in speaking to Business World. Ladies and gentlemen, healthcare, pharmaceutical and medicine is one such area where technology can play the game changer. But the flip side is that there is also a bit of an exploitation. We will keep and try to maintain and bring to you the balancing act. Thank you.